This delightful video kicks off by readying the old banger for a measly 250-kilometer trek. First, we'll tackle the impeller, which is as interesting as watching the paint dry. Next, we'll rip out the climate control since it has the audacity to leak. Now for the reason our precious Volga decided to throw a tantrum at the start. The engine had a hissy fit, detached from its mounts and lifted under acceleration, causing the fuel hose to sulk and leave the filter. The engine, of course, responded by stalling. But worry not, a longer hose will surely fix this. And naturally, I discovered that no matter which blessed day I chose to embark on my journey, the heavens would conspire against me and unleash their wrath, even on a perfect summer's day, especially in October. And the wipers, of course, they refused to work. So, in a stroke of genius, I tried rain repellent for the very first time. And no, not for taste. When it came to fitting the belt on the alternator, the mounting ear couldn't bear the pressure and snapped off. Thankfully, a makeshift tensioning system saved the day. I can't tell at this point whether it was aspen or birch. To wrap up this splendid adventure, I decided to enhance my field of view by installing a side window to replace the ever so classy stretch film. During the joyous journey, filming was a lost cause, as darkness descended almost instantly. Visibility, or lack thereof, was my constant companion. The rain repellent did its job until a 402 engine decided to spew a delightful cocktail of antifreeze and water onto the polycarbonate and glass from some mysterious source. Naturally, this occurred within the first few kilometers. And why, you might wonder, did the rear right wheel continue to wobble after replacing the axle? Simple, I didn't replace it. I could hardly feel it in the car, but on the other hand, the biting cold and wind were impossible to ignore. The headlights were simply pathetic. Between the droplets on the glass and any light source, oncoming cars, streetlights, tail lights, it was a miracle I wasn't completely disoriented. But overall, it was fun. If only the heater hadn't fused to the metal and refused to rotate. So, this was my stellar visibility. Out of the grand total of 250 kilometers, I had the pleasure of being towed for the final 17 kilometers. The impeller ultimately decided to sabotage the upper hose. I could have fixed it there and then, but in a torrential downpour, I figured it was more efficient to tow the car for the remaining distance. At last, the moment arrived to grace this heap with wheel spacers. We began with the front wheels, Ford rims widened by a generous 3 inches and adorned with two 35 by 70 tires. The tire choice wasn't purely my whimsical fancy, options were scarce. I searched high and low for something wider yet lower profile. But alas, my trusty steed now resembles an off-roader. The rear wheels, however, are a smidge wider, 275 by 60, with rims expanded by 4 inches. A beefier battery or a less temperamental starter may be in order because, even when cold, it demands a fully charged battery for ignition, and when hot, often refuses to start the engine altogether. But with a mere push from a few meters, it springs to life. Perhaps the electrics are throwing a tantrum, as per usual, but we shan't bother investigating.
Как обычно, разбираться с этим не было времени.
Anticipating the calamity ahead, we attempted to roll the wheel arches on this makeshift off-roader. Our ridiculous attempts began with a pipe, which was about as successful as trying to roll them with a shovel. Armed with a drive shaft, we managed to iron out ancient dents and rip off the wheel well liner. Despite our valiant efforts, these rusty arches stood defiant. Accepting my sheer incompetence at rolling wheel arches, I turned my attention to my one area of expertise, the only thing I know how to do. So, I had the brilliant idea of fitting a carburetor from a large truck. Doubting the sanity of this plan until the last minute, I encountered countless opposing opinions. Naturally, the only logical course of action was to test it myself. The theory was simple: a bigger carburetor has larger diffusers, allowing more air intake. More air equals more power, and you can compensate for any fuel discrepancies with jetting. But in this case, it's just a box standard large carburetor. In my humble opinion, a large carburetor should barely fit a medium-sized engine. A medium-sized carburetor would be better suited to a small engine. And a small carburetor? Well, that's only fit for the junkyard, much like all of my cars. What a delightful paradox.
Время удивительная штука. Когда ты молодой, у тебя полно времени. Разбрасываешься им налево, направо. Пару лет туда, пару лет сюда. А потом становишься старше, и вдруг, Господи, сколько мне осталось? 35 зим. Удивительная штука. Странная вещь. Он лавку обездвижил, мы как бы ченсли, видимо, имею щевенар, полно времени. Разбрасываешься налево, направо.
Naturally, I had to see if it could perform a burnout with those wheels. I doubt the gearbox or half shafts will endure. As for the carburetor, this blasted contraption actually improved performance. You can even hear it. But there's a catch: in some modes, the engine backfires into the carburetor, and adjusting the ignition doesn't help. I suspect it's an air leak, again, and there's a chance that replacing all the gaskets might do the trick, again. For a moment, we returned to the boomerang and set it in motion to jump-start the Volga with a V8 using a push starter. After leaving the village, I opted for a spot of target practice. It seems my aim was a tad off, but that's alright, I still have another shot. Naturally, I couldn't resist a good old-fashioned tug of war. And, of course, I had to indulge in a minor crash. Thanks for enduring this thrilling saga. Cheerio.